Holy moly, they actually did it! I'm pretty sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, but if not, then you definitely need to stay tuned to hear about this wild, historic, jaw-dropping bit of space news. I'm Space Kate, and you're watching Need to Know Space. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Now first up, I'm afraid I have to apologise. I didn't manage to get the September edition of the news update out to you. And it wasn't because there was a lack of space news, kind of the opposite in fact. And I had kind of a lot going on, so I ran out of time. I'm very, very sorry. But here are the key things you should have had on your September Space News bingo card. On September the 6th, Boeing Starliner capsule, Calypso, undocked from the International Space Station, leaving behind the crew who flew her up there. Butch Wilmore and Sully Williams are now part of the next expedition crew and will return to Earth next February. The Starliner capsule landed safely, on land as it was supposed to, on September the 7th. Now, for all that I have argued that Butch and Sully were not stranded on the ISS, at the point the Starliner undocked, well, there was no official seats for them to get back to Earth, should anything have gone very wrong. So, if they needed to abandon the space station, they would have had to have relied on makeshift seats made from foam strapped to the cargo compartment of the Crew 8 capsule and return to Earth without spacesuits, because the Boeing suits aren't compatible with the SpaceX Dragon. Nobody really made too much of it at the time, but from that moment until Crew 9 docked with the ISS, they were far more stranded, in my humble opinion, than they had been at any other time when Starliner was docked. On the 10th of September, commercial mission Polaris Dawn launched, and on September the 12th, the crew conducted the first non-governmental spacewalk. I did manage a video on this, so go ahead and check that one out if you want all the details. On the 11th of September, there was a Soyuz launch taking astronaut, photographer and general tinkerer Don Pettit to the International Space Station with Russian crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. Now, he's already been doing some pretty cool stuff and sharing it with us on Twitter. On the 28th of September, Crew 9 finally launched with its reduced crew of 2, and I breathed a big sigh of relief when they successfully docked to the International Space Station, meaning Butch and Sully now have dedicated seats on a spacecraft to bring them home next year. And there was plenty more, but shall we just get on with October? Why not? It's been another really busy month of space news. From planetary protection to booster catching to the largest gathering of space professionals in one place, in one time, in history. So here's what you need to know. Oh my goodness, they did actually do it. SpaceX caught the booster. SpaceX conducted the 6th integrated test flight of Starship and brought the enormous Super Heavy booster back to the launch site and successfully caught it using the chopsticks on the tower. It was crazy kind of watching it live, and I had to be very, very careful not to get overexcited and sweary because I was live on Sky News commenting on it as it happened. Now, the video is amazing, but I still don't think it really does justice to what actually happened, because you just cannot fathom the size of this thing, the booster. It's 71 metres tall. That's just the booster, by the way. Add on Starship and the full stack, 121 metres. So it's only the booster that they wanted to catch, and I actually struggled to find a famous building that's about 71 metres tall to put it in some kind of context for you, but we're probably talking about the height of a 25-storey high rise, or, if it helps, 41.5 times me. Either way, it is big, and catching something like that as it is falling back to Earth, that is hard. In fact, a decade ago, or even less, you would probably have said it wasn't even worth trying. So never underestimate SpaceX. Now, the thing that really blows my mind is that the Super Heavy booster, it was going faster than the speed of sound less than a minute before it was caught. So never mind your fancy F1 cars that can accelerate from, 0 to 100 miles in a couple of seconds, this Super Heavy booster had to decelerate from supersonic speed to stationary in under a minute. It's crazy. Impressive is an understatement. This was an incredible feat of engineering, so hats off to the SpaceX team, who sounded suitably elated when it happened.
Landing burn has been ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now in
Booster ready for shutdown.
Megadilla has caught the booster. This is absolutely insane. On the first ever attempt, we have successfully caught the Super Heavy booster back at the launch tower. What is this trying to do?
Are you kidding me?
Landing burn has been ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now in
Booster ready for shutdown.
Megadilla has caught the booster. This is absolutely insane. On the first ever attempt, we have successfully caught the Super Heavy booster back at the launch tower. What is this trying to do?
Are you kidding me?
ESA has launched its first planetary defence mission. On October the 5th, Europe launched Hera, the partner mission to NASA's asteroid redirect mission DART, which successfully showed it's possible to, well, basically smack a spacecraft into an asteroid and change its orbit. The technical term for this is the kinetic impact technique. It's good news if we were to spot something heading our way and wanted to knock it off course so it missed Earth. Though you also have to be kind of careful. Don't break up an asteroid into multiple asteroids that could cause you multiple problems. The DART mission targeted the binary asteroid system known as Didymos, and in September 2022 it hit Dimorphos, a moonlet, yep, official term, of the larger body Didymos. It successfully changed the orbital period of Dimorphos, making it the first time humans have ever changed the course of an asteroid. Observations from Earth show the time that Dimorphos takes to orbit Didymos was reduced by around 5%, 33 minutes, and the impact also created a plume of debris that stretches thousands of kilometres in space. Now in autumn 2026, Hera should reach Didymos to act as a kind of crash site investigator, getting a good look at what happened so we can better understand the impact of the DART impact. It's important to figure out things like how big was the crater it left? Did the asteroid reshape? And what exactly was it made of? So in future, if we ever needed to deflect a rogue asteroid, we would know how to be prepared. As an aside, this mission was built and launched in the space of just 4 years, which is pretty nifty when you consider some missions spend decades going from design to build to integration and finally launch. At the International Astronautical Congress in Milan recently, ESA Director General Joseph Aschbacher and the CEO of OHB Italia signed a contract for the first phase of work on Europe's second planetary defence mission, Ramses, which will rendezvous with and travel with an asteroid that's due to come close, well, in astronomical terms, to Earth in April 2029. On Friday the 13th, no less. I'm sure the mass media will get quite excited about that. Anyway, the mission wants to get up close to the asteroid and follow it on its journey as it passes by the Earth to see if there's any impact that Earth gravity has on it. Now, in order to reach the asteroid, the mission needs to be launched in early 2028, so it's a bit of a race against the clock for both funding and build time for this mission. On the 14th of October, Europa Clipper, the biggest spacecraft NASA has ever sent on a planetary mission, got off the ground on a Falcon Heavy after a few delays due to weather at Cape Canaveral, including a hurricane. Now, Europa Clipper is heading to Jupiter's icy moon, Europa, to explore whether there are places below the icy surface that could support life. Europa has a huge subsurface ocean, and there's scientific evidence that suggests the ingredients for life may exist there. It'll take about 5.5 years to get there, so we're looking at around 2030 for it to reach Jupiter and begin its 49 flybys of Europa. The mission aims to determine the thickness of Europa's icy shell and figure out how the subsurface ocean interacts with the surface itself. They also want to investigate what the ocean is made up of and whether it has the ingredients to permit and sustain life, and to study Europa's surface features to learn more about how they were formed, locate any signs of recent activity such as sliding crust plates or plumes of venting water into space. The 75th International Astronautical Congress took place in Milan from the 14th to the 18th of October and brought together 11,200 space professionals and students to share their research, make connections, win contracts and learn from each other. It was honestly a bit of a blur of activity, with about 20 different technical sessions taking place at any one time, plus the plenaries, including the traditional heads of agencies. There were keynotes, special sessions, and 530 exhibitors across 2 enormous halls. And then there were the receptions, the parties, the reunions, the catch-ups. By the end of the week, I think I was probably equal parts espresso, prosecco, and gelato. Now, highlights for me on the exhibition floor were the scale rockets on the Indian Space Research Organisation stand, models of JAXA's Slim lander and a few of Gateway, plus some future space station designs. Now, incredibly, NASA had bought part of the sample of asteroid Bennu that their OSIRIS-REx mission brought back to Earth. And for me, the piece de resistance was the Chinese sample from the far side of the moon, collected on their Chang'e 6 mission. Very, very cool. Now, I've got various stuff to share with you from the conference. I'll probably be making a few other videos. I'll get that out as and when I can. But in terms of breaking news, here's what we've got. The release of the first mosaic of images from the Euclid mission, which aims to create the most detailed 3D map of the universe. These observations, taken over the course of 2 weeks, create a chunk of that map, or really it's rather a sliver of the map, since it's only about 1% of the entire thing. Unveiling the image, ESA's Director of Science, Carol Mundell, explained that there are 14 million galaxies in the image, adding that the scale is completely incomprehensible. So, given my feeble attempt to bring some context to the size of the Super Heavy booster, I think I'm going to leave it to ESA to give you a better idea of the scale involved here. So we were treated to a glimpse of some of the Chang'e 6 sample that China brought back from the far side of the moon. They're the only country ever to have landed on the far side of the moon, and then they went back and collected a sample. Pretty cool. Guan Feng, director of the Lunar Exploration and Space Engineering Center at the Chinese National Space Agency, revealed some initial findings about the samples, saying it's lighter in colour than those from the near side of the moon, which they also collected on their Chang'e 5 mission, and it has a lower density, looser structure and a higher porosity than the near side samples. International researchers are apparently welcome to apply to study bits of the sample. And remember, it's the far side, not the dark side of the moon. On Earth, we always see the same face of the moon, but the bits in darkness change depending on its position, which is why we get a full moon, a half moon and a crescent moon. It doesn't really make sense to say the dark side if you want to specify a location, because that's like saying, well, it's nighttime here in London, I live on the dark side of Earth. But then the sun comes up in the morning and I'm still in London, but it's no longer the dark side of Earth. See what I mean? Fashionable Milan provided the perfect setting for the unveiling of Axiom's extravehicular mobility unit, AxiomU, created in partnership with luxury designer brand Prada. Prada? Okay, this somewhat unlikely pairing of commercial space and fashion brand apparently enabled Axiom, who won the NASA funding to develop the lunar suit, to leverage Prada's expertise in procuring materials and innovative sewing techniques. So now you know. The suit has apparently got improved safety and mobility compared with the original Apollo suits, and despite partnering with a designer, the suits won't actually be tailor-made for each astronaut like they were in the 1960s. Instead, there are different size components that can be switched out so that the suit will fit a much wider range of people, including women. Woohoo! Now, nobody likes a bad breakup, especially when it's unexpected. And I'll admit my heart sank when I heard of the total loss of Intelsat 33 when it was announced by Intelsat on the 21st of October. This was after the US Space Command reported it was tracking 20 debris objects in GEO on the 19th of October. This is bad. Not only because the satellite was only 7 years into a predicted 15 to 20 year lifetime, not only because the failure affects communication services here on the ground, but because it reportedly broke apart, creating chunks of space junk in geostationary orbit, which is an incredibly important and precious orbit. Satellites in GEO form the backbone of global telecommunications. They're used for broadcasting, weather forecasting, Earth observation and defence. And there are limited slots in the geostationary belt, so any debris poses a real threat to other satellites. The last thing we want is to start a chain reaction where debris from one satellite hits and destroys another, creating even more debris, which then hits more satellites, and so on and so on and so on. That would make parts of space totally unusable. And in fact, there's a name for this chain reaction: Kzla Syndrome, as proposed in 1978 by NASA scientists Donald Kzla and Burton Coeur-Pellet, who somehow avoided having his name being associated with catastrophe. Now, I've seen varying reports of the number of pieces of debris. Originally, ExoAnalytics Solutions said it was following 57 pieces of debris from the destroyed satellite. However, Russia's Roscosmos Space Agency said in a social media post that it had identified around 80 pieces, and also that analysis of the trajectories of the fragments shows the destruction of the satellite was instantaneous and high energy. In fact, since my first draft of this script, ExoAnalytics' estimate on the number of bits of debris has risen to around 500. Yikes! So what exactly happened? Did the satellite suffer an onboard failure? Was it taken out by a piece of space debris or a micrometeor? Or worse? Whatever the cause, it must have been a very tough day in the Boeing Space Press Office, since it was a Boeing-built satellite. Eek. Crew 8 conducted its undocking and splashdown, returning to Earth on the 25th of October. After they returned, the crew were taken to Ascension Sacred Heart Hospital in Pensacola, out of an abundance of caution, and one crew member was kept in overnight for observation. No further information about who that was or why they were kept in for observation has been released on the grounds of medical privacy, but NASA has confirmed the crew member is in good health and will resume normal post-flight reconditioning with the other crew members. On the 29th of October, China launched its latest crew to the Tiangong space station. The crew of 3 taikonauts launched on a Long March 2F rocket on the 19th mission of the Shenzhou program. The crew was only publicly announced on the day of the launch, and it consists of Sai Suzhou, Song Lingdong and Wang Haozhou, who becomes China's 3rd woman in space and 1st female engineer. The Shenzhou 18 crew greeted them on the Chinese station after a short launch to docking sequence that saw them arrive in just under 6.5 hours. Now, lastly, a couple of little bits of news in brief for you. On October the 23rd, Blue Origin completed its 27th New Shepard mission and debuted its 2nd human-rated capsule. Blue Origin is also busy readying its New Glenn heavy lift rocket for its first launch. New Glenn's first stage, equipped with 7 BE-4 engines, was rolled out at the end of the month for a static test firing. It's all part of the effort to fit in the rocket's long-awaited first flight by the end of 2024. The rocket has been named "So, you're telling me there's a chance?", which is likely a reference to the fact the company wants to attempt to land the booster on a recovery vessel on its first flight. The boat has been named Jacqueline after CEO Jeff Bezos' mother. And a quick update on Fram2, the mission I mentioned in August. It's a private crewed mission to fly over Earth's poles. It was meant to launch by the end of this year, which did always seem a little bit optimistic, but it has indeed slipped, and the launch is now likely to happen in early spring next year. And finally, astronaut Don Pettit's son revealed on Twitter that his dad has been summoned for jury service in the US. The only small problem is that he's currently orbiting the planet at about 17,500 miles an hour on the International Space Station. People's suggestions for excuses as to why he can't do his duty include, "I'm just too high right now," which did make me laugh. And on that note, I will say goodbye. Don't forget to like and subscribe, or tell other people about this channel. I had no idea quite how much work this was all going to be when I started, so it's always nice to get a comment or see that people are watching. So until next time, ad astra!